I never thought I would find myself here, sharing such a personal story. My name is Jake, and I'm a 37-year-old guy living in a suburban neighborhood in Ohio. I've been married to my wife, Sarah, for over a decade. We have 2 kids, a comfortable house, and on the surface, everything seemed perfect. But like any good story, things aren't always what they seem. Lately, I noticed some changes in Sarah. Started small, her late nights at work and the sudden urgency to hit the gym more often. I brushed it off at first, telling myself everyone goes through phases. But then I noticed her phone was always nearby and she had become more secretive. If I walked into the room, she'd quickly minimize whatever she was looking at, and if I tried to ask her about her day, she became defensive. My instincts kicked in. I started keeping tabs on her, not in a creepy way, but just paying a bit more attention. One particular evening, she said she was going out with some friends for drinks. I thought it was harmless, until I got a call from one of her friends saying Sarah hadn't shown up. My heart sank and a storm of emotions hit me. I asked my friend Greg, who worked in the security department at the mall, to pull up the camera footage. I thought it would ease my mind. What I saw instead shattered it. There she was, leaving our driveway in our family van, but she didn't head to the bar. She went to a different part of town, to a cheap motel. My heart raced. I couldn't breathe. I sat frozen in my car, staring at the screen. It was like I was watching a movie, except this was my life. The gut-wrenching feeling of betrayal washed over me like cold water. I had to face the truth. The next day, when she came home from work, her demeanor was the same, light, carefree. I could hardly look at her as we sat at the dinner table with the kids. My mind was racing. Should I confront her right there? Should I wait? The internal battle was exhausting. Eventually, the kids went to bed, and I knew I couldn't keep this inside any longer. "Sarah, we need to talk," I said, hoping my voice didn't shake. She turned to me, her brow furrowing with concern. "Is everything okay?" she asked, feigning innocence. "Not really. I want to know why you lied about last night," I replied, keeping my tone steady. Her expression changed instantly. The guilt flashed across her face for just a moment before she put on her defensive persona. "What are you talking about? I went out with the girls. You know how they can be, always late." I didn't let her off the hook. "Is that why you were at the motel?" Her face paled and she feigned confusion. "What motel? Are you crazy?" I pulled out my phone and showed her the footage. The silence was deafening. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water as she scrambled for words. I watched every hint of her composure fall apart. "Jake, I can explain," but I cut her off. "Explain? Sarah, you're having an affair with our chauffeur. How do you explain that?" In that moment, I was consumed by a wave of emotions: anger, heartbreak, betrayal. I felt like I was being suffocated by the weight of it all. I wanted to scream, to throw something, but I stayed calm. Her excuses rolled off her tongue like practiced lines. "It's not what it looks like. I was going to tell you, I swear. It's only been a few times." She started crying, and I had to fight the urge to feel sorry for her. I wanted to scream back, "You think tears will fix this?" I felt the anger boiling inside me. It was hard to digest how she could look me in the eye and lie so smoothly. I wanted to tear down the facade she put up, to expose the truth behind the lies. But I also felt something else, an unsettling calm. This was my chance to plan, to take control of my life again. I knew I had to make a decision, and this was just the beginning. In that moment, I realized I could do something that would change everything. I could turn the tables. I wasn't just going to let her walk all over me. I would show her the consequences of her actions. My mind began racing with thoughts, plotting a way to make her feel the sting of betrayal as I had. The emotional turmoil was all-consuming, but one thing was clear: I wouldn't be the victim in this story. I would rise from the ashes of our broken marriage and reclaim my life. To be continued. After that confrontation, I felt a whirlwind of emotions swirling inside me. I was angry, betrayed, and heartbroken all at once. But as the hours passed, I realized that those feelings could be channeled into something productive. I wouldn't let this situation define me. I began crafting a plan to take control of my life, and it started with Sarah. The first step was to gather more evidence. I wanted to ensure that there was no way she could deny or talk her way out of this. I had already seen her with the chauffeur, Mark, on that security footage, but I needed more details. The next day, I decided to follow her. I told her I had a work meeting early in the morning, which gave me the perfect excuse to leave the house before her. As I drove around our neighborhood, I felt a mix of excitement and dread. I parked a few blocks down from our house and waited. Sure enough, Sarah left the house in our van right on cue. My heart raced as I followed her. She drove straight to a coffee shop and met up with Mark. Watching them laugh and share a casual cup of coffee together was gut-wrenching. I felt like a fool for trusting her, for believing she was anything but the woman I was seeing right now. I sat in my car, battling with the conflicting emotions of wanting to confront her and the desire to gather more evidence. I decided to wait it out. I snapped a few pictures of them together, hoping to capture that moment of betrayal forever. After their coffee date, they left the shop and headed towards the park. It felt surreal watching my wife walk hand in hand with another man. The anger bubbled up again, and I had to take deep breaths to keep calm. I couldn't let her know I was watching. It would only give her the upper hand. Returning home, I kept the pictures to myself, storing them away as ammunition for when the time came. I needed to think about my next move. I had a few things in mind that would start to shift the power back into my hands. I decided to invest in a new luxury car. I had been eyeing this sleek black sedan for a while. It was a substantial upgrade from our family van, and it symbolized a new beginning for me, one that wouldn't include her. After finalizing the deal, I felt a rush of adrenaline. It was a statement, a way to show her that I was moving on from the hurt she caused. Sure, it might sound petty to some, but I wanted her to feel the weight of her actions. I wanted her to see me thriving while she was left behind. I could imagine the look on her face when she saw me driving that car instead of the van she had claimed was necessary for our family. The following day, I made sure to park the new car in our driveway, conspicuously displaying it when she came home. I could see her eyes widen as she approached. "You got a new car," she exclaimed, trying to mask her surprise with feigned enthusiasm. "That's great, Jake." "Yeah, I figured it was time for an upgrade," I said casually, holding back a smirk. The thought of her disgruntled face delighted me. Her jealousy was palpable. If she thought I was still the same man she could manipulate, she was sorely mistaken. Our conversations were strained, filled with surface-level pleasantries while an undercurrent of tension simmered between us. She tried to ask about the car, but I kept my answers vague, enjoying the discomfort it caused her. It was a game now, a twisted chess match, and I was ready to play. As days ticked by, I continued to gather more evidence of her affair. I hired a private investigator to follow Sarah and Mark, getting detailed reports of their rendezvous. I learned they were meeting nearly every day, often for lunch or drinks after work. I didn't confront her again, choosing to keep the details hidden. I knew I needed a solid case to make my move. Meanwhile, Sarah's behavior had become more erratic. She was on edge, constantly checking her phone as if she were anticipating a message. I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction knowing she was likely waiting for Mark to text her. It was as if she was living in a constant state of anxiety, and frankly, I was enjoying it. One evening, she asked if we could have a heart-to-heart talk. At that moment, I was torn between wanting to know what she had to say and not wanting to give her the chance to manipulate the situation. I decided to play it cool. "Sure, I'm always up for a good chat," I replied nonchalantly. We sat in the living room, and she started off on some rehearsed lines about how she felt distant lately. She spoke about needing more excitement in her life, and I had to fight hard to keep a straight face. I played along, nodding as she rambled on, knowing very well the excitement she sought was in the arms of another man. "Maybe we can go on a trip together or try something new," she suggested, her eyes darting to my face for signs of approval. "Sure, that sounds great," I answered, hiding the glee that bubbled inside me. Little did she know that I was already plotting a trip of my own, a trip that would involve me leaving her in the dust and reclaiming my life. In the back of my mind, I knew things were about to escalate. I was ready to execute my plan, and nothing could stop me now. With every passing day, I became more resolute in my revenge. This was no longer just about her affair. It was about reclaiming my life and dignity. To be continued. As the weeks went by, I kept my plan simmering just under the surface. It was time to execute the final phase of my revenge. I had collected enough evidence of Sarah's affair, and the burden of carrying it was becoming unnecessary. The confrontation I had envisioned would not be just a casual discussion. It would be a reveal, an explosion of truths that would leave no room for her lies. I arranged to meet with Greg, my friend, who had been my sounding board throughout this ordeal. We grabbed drinks at a local bar, and I laid out my entire plan. I want to confront her with everything, I said, my voice steady. I want her to see that I know everything she can't hide anymore. Greg nodded, sipping his beer. You have the evidence. You're sure you're ready for this? Absolutely. I want her to feel the consequences, to know that she can't just lie and manipulate her way through life anymore. With his support, I felt even more emboldened. I had also decided that when I confronted Sarah, I would not only present the evidence but also tell her about my new plans. I was taking a trip, a much-needed getaway for myself, to find clarity and regroup my life. I wanted her to realize that I was moving on without her, and I wanted her to feel the weight of her choices. The day of the confrontation arrived quicker than I expected. After a long day at work, I returned home, ready to finally put everything on the table. Sarah was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone. I could sense the tension in the air. Sarah, we need to talk, I said, my heart racing but my voice steady. She looked up, a flicker of anxiety crossing her face. What about? About us. About everything that's been going on. She shifted in her seat, the pretenses fading as she put her phone down. Jake, I don't think this is the right time. Actually, I think it's the perfect time, I interrupted. I pulled out my phone, bringing up the photo evidence I had collected over the past weeks. Let's start with these. Her face turned pale as I scrolled through the pictures. What are those? Where did you get those? She stammered, her voice shaking. Surveillance footage, Sarah. Footage that shows you and Mark at the cafe, the park, the motel, everything. You can't deny it anymore. Her defenses crumbled. Jake, please let me explain. But I was done with her excuses. Explain what? How you've betrayed our marriage. How you've lied to me day in and day out. You've been living a double life while I've been here, taking care of our kids and trusting you. Tears formed in her eyes, but I didn't feel sympathy. I had to find out this way. You chose to have an affair with our chauffeur, and now it's time for you to face the consequences. What do you mean? She asked, her voice cracking. While you've been off living your little fantasy, I've made some changes too. I'm going away for a while to think about our future, or rather, my future without you. Her reaction was immediate. She leapt up, her expression shifting from fear to anger. You can't just leave. We need to work on this, Jake. I'll do anything. I shook my head. You've had your chances, Sarah. This isn't about fixing things anymore. It's about me reclaiming my life. The desperation in her voice was palpable. Please, I love you. I made a mistake, I swear. It didn't mean anything. Don't say that. You can't love me and betray me at the same time. I can't trust you anymore, and I won't be part of this charade. I took a deep breath, feeling my heart race as I delivered the final blow. I want a divorce. The words hung in the air like a heavy fog, and I watched her face fall. She opened and closed her mouth, clearly struggling to find her next words. You can't mean that. Believe me, I do. You've made your choice, and I'm making mine. The room was silent except for her soft sobs. I felt a strange mix of relief and sadness wash over me. This was it. I had finally taken control of my life after being blindsided for so long. I didn't feel victorious, but I felt empowered. As I watched her crumble, I realized that this moment was not just about revenge. It was about reclaiming my dignity and self-worth. I was no longer a pawn in her game. I spent the next few days preparing for my trip, ensuring that all the loose ends were tied up before I left. I also made arrangements for the kids, letting my parents know that I would need their help during this transition. Sarah was still in shock, and I had no plans to involve her in my next steps. I packed my bags and loaded them into my new car, feeling a sense of freedom wash over me. I was finally taking the reins of my life back. The drive out of town felt liberating, like I was shedding the weight of the past. I was heading towards a future that, while uncertain, was entirely mine to shape. The turmoil of the past few weeks had been exhausting, but I was ready to embrace whatever was next. I needed this time away to clear my head, reflect on everything that had transpired, and figure out my next steps. As I hit the open road, I couldn't help but feel a flicker of hope. This was a new beginning, and while I might have been hurt, I was ready to move forward. To be continued, driving away from my old life felt like breaking free from chains that had bound me for far too long. I hit the highway, the new car gliding effortlessly, and I allowed myself to breathe deeply. The air felt fresher outside the suffocating atmosphere of deceit I had been living in. I had no fixed destination. I just drove, letting the road guide me to an unknown future. After a few hours, I decided to stop at a small town diner for some comfort food. The place was quaint, with checkered tablecloths and a jukebox playing classic tunes in the background. I settled into a booth, ordered a burger, and let my mind wander. I could almost picture Sarah back home, flailing in the aftermath of our confrontation. Was she regretting her decisions, or was she already plotting her next move? I shook my head. It didn't matter anymore. As I waited for my food, I took out my phone and scrolled through the photos I had of her with Mark. There they were, smiling, laughing, living in a world that I was no longer a part of. A wave of anger washed over me, but I quickly pushed it aside. This trip was about healing, not dwelling. I wanted to be better, not bitter. My phone buzzed, pulling me from my thoughts. It was a text from Greg. "How are you holding up?" Heard from Sarah. I quickly typed back, "I'm okay, just taking some time for myself." No, I haven't heard from her and I don't plan to. I finished my meal, paid the bill, and walked outside. The sun was shining, and I felt a tingle of determination course through me. I was ready to embrace this new chapter. I decided to check into a small motel for a couple of nights, somewhere I could clear my head and gather my thoughts. The motel was charmingly old-fashioned, with a neon sign that buzzed quietly in the evening air. I threw my bags onto the bed and plopped down beside them, feeling the exhaustion of the last few weeks catch up with me. I picked up the remote and turned on the TV, but I couldn't focus on anything. My mind drifted back to my family, my kids. As the night deepened, I felt a pang of guilt for leaving them behind, but I had to remind myself that this was for their benefit too. They deserved to have a father who was whole, not one who was broken and filled with resentment. I could only hope that I was making the right decision for all of us. The next morning, I woke up early, the sun streaming through the motel window. I decided to take a walk around the area, hoping to clear my mind and perhaps find a little inspiration. There was a small park nearby, and I wandered over. The fresh air and sounds of nature were invigorating. As I walked, I began to think about my future. I realized I needed to focus on myself first, my health, my happiness, and my career. I had been so wrapped up in our marriage and family responsibilities that I had put my own dreams on hold. Maybe this was the push I needed to rediscover my passions. After my walk, I returned to the motel and sat down to update my resume. I wanted to explore new opportunities, perhaps even a career change. I felt a surge of excitement imagining a new life, one where I was free to pursue my goals without being tied to someone who didn't value me. As I typed away, I received another text, this time from Sarah. My heart raced, but I forced myself to take a deep breath before opening it. "Jake, can we talk? I'm sorry for everything. I made a huge mistake." I stared at the message, my fingers hovering over the screen. Part of me wanted to respond, to hear her out, but I quickly reminded myself of all the lies and manipulation. I couldn't afford to fall back into that trap. Instead, I typed, "I need time, Sarah. This isn't just about what happened, it's about everything." I hit send and tossed my phone aside. I wouldn't let her pull me back into her chaos. I was reclaiming my life, and that meant standing firm in my decision. After a few days of reflection, I returned home, ready to face the reality that awaited me. Sarah was still there, but the energy in the house had shifted. There was a stark tension in the air, an uneasiness that hadn't existed before. I walked in and found her sitting at the kitchen table, her eyes red from crying. "Jake, I'm so glad you're back. Can we talk?" "Sure," I replied, my heart pounding. "I've had time to think. I know I made mistakes, but I'm willing to do anything to make it right," she said, her voice trembling slightly. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. "You say that now, but how do I know you mean it? You've said you're sorry before, but nothing ever changed. Please, I'll go to counseling. I'll do whatever it takes to fix this, she pleaded, her desperation palpable. I felt a flicker of sympathy. Sarah, I want to believe you, but after everything that's happened, trust is gone. It's going to take a lot more than words to mend this. She nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. I know, I'm sorry for everything. I've hurt you, and I can't take that back. I saw genuine remorse in her eyes, but I still felt guarded. I need time to figure things out, to see if it's possible to trust you again. Is there any chance we could work through this? I can't imagine my life without you, she said softly. I hesitated. Could I really see a future with her? Or was I simply looking at the remnants of a relationship that had shattered beyond repair? Let's take it one step at a time, I said finally. We can start with counseling, but know that I'm still moving forward with my life, regardless of the outcome. She nodded, and for the first time in a long while I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, there was a path forward. But I remained resolute in my determination to prioritize my own growth and well-being. This was still my journey, and I would not lose sight of that. To be continued. Over the next few weeks, things shifted in our household. Sarah and I were tentatively navigating a new dynamic. We had agreed to attend counseling together, and while it felt strange to sit across from her in a therapist's office, I was determined to give it a fair chance. The sessions were filled with awkward silences and painful admissions, but there was also an underlying current of hope, the possibility of rebuilding something that had felt irreparably broken. At the first session, the therapist, a woman named Dr. Edwards, encouraged us to express our feelings openly. Sarah spoke about her fears and loneliness, and for the first time I saw a vulnerability in her that I hadn't recognized before. She admitted that her affair stemmed from feeling neglected, that life had become monotonous and she craved excitement. It was a bittersweet revelation. I could empathize with her feelings, but it didn't excuse her actions. When it was my turn, I laid it all out. I felt blindsided and betrayed. I trusted you completely, and to see you with someone else was devastating. I just don't know how to move forward when trust has been broken. Dr. Edwards nodded. Trust is crucial in any relationship. Rebuilding it takes time and consistent effort from both parties. I could see that Sarah was willing to put in the effort, but I still felt like I was walking on eggshells. Each session revealed more about the flaws in our relationship, and while it was uncomfortable, it was also constructive. We began to communicate more openly, and I found myself sharing parts of my life that I had kept bottled up for too long. Yet I was still on guard. I had seen glimpses of the old Sarah, the one who could be charming and manipulative. I needed to remain vigilant, not because I wanted to punish her, but because I had to protect myself. Outside of counseling, I also focused on reshaping my own life. I started hitting the gym regularly, not just for physical fitness, but to reclaim my self-confidence. I dabbled in hobbies I had previously neglected, like painting and writing. It felt good to express myself creatively, and I found solace in those moments of solitude. But every time I returned home after a workout or a quiet evening out with friends, I felt that familiar tension. Sarah was trying hard to prove her commitment, but I couldn't shake the lingering doubts. I often caught her glancing at her phone, and the paranoia would creep back in. Was she really committed to making things work, or was she still playing games? One afternoon, I decided to drop by the local cafe where I had seen Sarah meeting Mark. It was a spur-of-the-moment decision, driven by a mix of curiosity and concern. I didn't expect to see her there, but when I entered, my heart dropped. There she was, sitting with a group of friends, laughing effortlessly. I stood by the entrance watching, and it felt like a punch to the gut. Was this what she meant by change? Sure, she was smiling, but it felt so rehearsed. I quickly left, feeling a wave of anger and betrayal wash over me anew. That night I confronted her again at home. I saw you at the cafe this afternoon, I said, my voice steady. What, with who? She asked, her brow furrowing in genuine confusion. With your friends, I replied, my voice sharp. You looked like you were having a great time. She looked offended. Are you serious? I can't have friends now. I'm allowed to have a social life. I tried to keep my tone calm. I'm not saying you can't have friends, but it just feels like you're trying to distract yourself instead of focusing on us. "I've been working hard to fix this, Jake," she shot back, her emotions flaring. "You're the one who keeps bringing up the past, because you're not showing me any real change. I feel like I'm still waiting for the other shoe to drop." She crossed her arms defensively, her eyes narrowing. "What do you want from me then?" "I want honesty and transparency. I want to feel secure in this relationship again." We were at an impasse and I could feel the tension escalate, but instead of succumbing to anger, I took a step back. "Let's take a break from this discussion for now," I said. "I need some space to think." The following days felt like a fog. I tried to focus on my own well-being, but the weight of the unresolved tension with Sarah loomed over me. It was hard to shake off the nagging feeling that she could easily slip back into her old habits. I turned to Greg for support, and he encouraged me to stay focused on my own progress. "Just keep working on yourself, man. You've already made so much progress," he said during one of our catch-ups. "And if she's not willing to step up, you'll know what to do." I appreciated his support, but I still had to confront the reality of our situation. Knew that a decision had to be made, whether that meant continuing down this path of reconciliation or finally stepping away for good. The climax of my internal struggle came one evening when I returned home from another long day. As I walked through the door, I found Sarah sitting at the dining room table, a quiet seriousness in her demeanor. "Jake, we need to talk," she said, her voice steady. "All right," I replied, steeling myself for whatever was to come. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said about needing trust and transparency. I want to prove to you that I can be that wife for you, the one you deserve." I nodded, wanting to hear her out but also guarded. "How do you plan to do that?" "I want to cut all ties with Mark. I've already told him I can't see him anymore. It was a mistake and I need to focus on my family." Her words hit me like a wave. I felt a mix of relief and skepticism. "And you expect me to believe that just like that?" "I know it's going to take time," she said, tears welling in her eyes, "but I'm committed to this for you, for us, and for the kids. I'm willing to do whatever it takes." At that moment, I could see a flicker of sincerity in her eyes, but I reminded myself that I needed to be cautious. "I appreciate that, Sarah, but it's going to take more than just words for me to trust you again." "I understand," she replied. "I'm willing to show you." In that instant, I felt a glimmer of hope again. Maybe this time we could actually build something better. But it would be a long road ahead, and I was determined to set boundaries to protect myself. "I'll give you a chance," I said slowly. "But remember, actions speak louder than words. I need to see that you're serious about this." We sat in silence for a moment, the air thick with the weight of our conversation. I felt a mixture of trepidation and a hint of optimism. Perhaps this was the turning point we needed, but I couldn't shake the nagging doubt that still lingered in the back of my mind. Only time would reveal whether this was a true turning point in our relationship or just another fleeting moment of desperation. To be continued. The next few weeks were a roller coaster of emotions. Sarah was dedicated to proving her commitment, attending therapy sessions with me, and actively engaging in conversations about rebuilding trust. I appreciated her efforts, but I still felt like I was walking a tightrope. Each day was a test of my resolve and her sincerity. We continued our counseling sessions, which evolved into deeper discussions about our past and hopes for the future. I discovered things about Sarah that I hadn't known before, the insecurities that had driven her to seek validation outside our marriage. She admitted her fear of inadequacy and how it had made her vulnerable to temptation. Hearing her share those feelings was eye-opening, and I began to understand her motivations, though it didn't excuse her actions. One evening, we had a breakthrough. We were sitting on the couch together, a comfortable silence enveloping us. I felt a shift in the air, and it dawned on me that I had started to let my guard down just a little. I reached for her hand, a simple gesture that seemed to spark something between us. "Do you remember when we first met?" I asked, smiling at the fond memory. She laughed softly. "Of course I do. I thought you were so charming, always cracking jokes. You made me feel like I was the center of the universe." I chuckled, recalling how I had swept her off her feet with my silly antics. "You made me feel like I could be myself. That's something I've missed for a long time." As we reminisced, I realized that beneath the hurt and betrayal, there were still remnants of love and affection. It was a fragile thread, but it was there. I could see the determination in her eyes as she leaned closer, her voice sincere. "I want to make you feel that way again, Jake. I want to be the wife you deserve." We began discussing what rebuilding our relationship would look like. We set goals for ourselves, from open communication to more shared activities. I suggested weekly date nights, a space where we could reconnect without distractions. As we made plans, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. Maybe we could turn this tragedy into an opportunity to grow closer. However, I also insisted on setting boundaries. I needed her to understand that trust had to be earned and it wouldn't happen overnight. I was open to giving her that chance, but I was still cautious. I began checking in on her with more frequency, asking about her day and whom she was spending time with. I wanted her to know that I was serious about rebuilding, but I also needed to feel secure. As the weeks turned into months, we gradually began to forge a new path together. Sarah kept her word about cutting ties with Mark. There were moments of temptation where she felt weak, but she owned up to those moments and communicated them to me. It was a refreshing change from the deceit I had experienced before. I also focused on my own journey of self-discovery. I threw myself into my hobbies and work, slowly feeling like I was reclaiming my identity outside of our relationship. I sought out new connections with friends and family, sharing my experiences with them. They became my support system, helping me navigate the tumultuous waters of rebuilding trust. One evening, after a particularly great date night, Sarah and I sat on the back porch, sipping wine and watching the stars twinkle against the night sky. I felt a sense of peace wash over me. As we talked about our dreams and aspirations, I began to see a future that didn't feel so uncertain. "Jake, I know I've hurt you deeply and I can't change that, but I want to spend the rest of my life making it up to you," she said, her voice earnest. I looked into her eyes, searching for any hint of insincerity. Instead, I found a woman who was committed to making things right. "I appreciate that, Sarah, I really do, but this is a journey for both of us. I need to make sure I'm not just forgiving but also learning to trust again." "I understand," she replied, "and I'll do everything I can to show you that I'm worthy of that trust." As we sat there watching the stars, I realized that while our love story had gone off course, it was still ours to navigate. There would be ups and downs, and maybe a time would come when our paths would diverge, but right now, we were on the same journey. We made a pact that night, a commitment to work together, to always communicate openly, and to prioritize our relationship. In that moment, I felt a flicker of hope, a belief that maybe we could build a stronger foundation than before, one built on honesty and understanding. As I lay in bed that night, I reflected on everything I had been through. I had been hurt but had also grown in ways I never expected. I had taken control of my life, and while there were still uncertainties ahead, I felt empowered to face them. I had learned some valuable lessons about love, trust, and resilience. I knew that whatever the outcome, I would be okay. I had rediscovered my strength, and that was something no one could take from me. In the end, this wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming my life and realizing that I was worthy of love and respect. I was ready to embrace the future, whatever it held, with open arms. And that was the most liberating feeling of all.